That's not the intro. This is the intro.
Consider what he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy.
Can I just interject here for a second? This woman's really scary. She could easily get elected president. She's much more skillful than I have ever seen. She's a liar on the deepest level. The things she is saying right now are not just untrue. They're the opposite of the truth, which is the hallmark of evil. She's an extremist. She'll say anything. She's much more like Gavin Newsom than I ever realized. I could go through a whole litany of why what she's saying is not true. It wasn't an armed mob. There's not one person inside the Capitol with a firearm, period.
Not just that. From what I understand, the only knife they found on the January 6th Capitol was in a medical emergency kit. Yes, some people had baseball bats and some people had mace and pepper spray. That is not what you insurrect with. I want to get to one in the beginning that I haven't seen this full interview, but I think Tucker didn't remark on.
The only person who was shot in the Capitol was an unarmed woman shot by one of Nancy Pelosi's bodyguards. So again and again, she's telling us that she fought the cartels to secure the border. She's the border czar, and the border is controlled by the cartels.
She argued that Donald Trump, quote, tried to throw away your vote. Didn't the Democrat Party just throw away
14 million and install 14 million?
Well, exactly.
Primary votes.
She's saying that Donald Trump will free from prison violent extremists.
That's what she did.
Meaning,
literally,
like 75-year-old lower middle class women with diabetes. When she endorsed defunding the police and opening the prisons to allow actual criminals out, which is why the crime rate has spiked, to allow the population of Venezuela's prisons, Caracas's prisons, are now living in the United States because of her. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, and I don't want to sound like I'm whining or fact checking, which I hate, but what she's saying is the mirror image of the truth. She doesn't care. She's got no reference points in the truth, and she's an extremist. And she's a former prosecutor, and no former prosecutor should hold power, period. I've covered them my whole life. I've intensely disliked every single one of them for good reason. I think they're scary. They're liars, and they're megalomaniacal. And they put people in prison for political reasons. I've seen it again and again and again, and she's one of them.
All politicians, virtually all. But the beginning part here, I'm not going to play the whole thing again. Just consider
what he intends.
Listen, her nasal voice drives. She's talking like, hey, delivery's good. She's a decent-looking human being. They made her up good, and she's talking nice and not pointing the finger. Consider the journalist part.
To do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists.
Explicit intent, not explicit statement, explicit promise. Explicit intent means he explicitly intends to do so.
Who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy.
The problem is, it's so flipping enraging that it's not possible anybody can be so deceitful and dishonest. And when Tucker says it's the opposite of the truth, maybe we're saying the same thing, in that everything that she's saying Trump will do is what they are guilty of themselves. I don't know how many times we've said it on this show, and it's worth repeating. Locking up journalists. You mean kind of like what they allowed Ukraine to do to Gonzalo Lira. Locking up their political adversaries, kind of like exactly what they're doing here. At least they don't poison their political rivals here. They just let some 20-year-old mentally unhinged schnook take an open shot because they left the room. Everything that she says that she accuses Trump of doing is what they are doing themselves in real time. It makes me want to... I can't swear for another 3 minutes. Got to get 8 minutes into the show. It makes me want to flipping puke. Like really, it actually upsets my stomach. And then they get up there and they talk about the joke. I'm putting this on blast. I don't know who it was that brought it to my attention. But now that I know it, I'm bringing it to the attention of everybody. I've been going around all day today, spontaneously in my house, breaking it. Joy, joy, joy. Look at his hand, by the way. He's lit. Look at his hand. Joy, joy. It's psychotic. This is POS race baiting Al Sharpton. Joy. Look at that face. That looked like the face of joy to you.
If we stay together, joy, 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 joy.
I did not know that this was literally the motto of a part of the Nazi government, and apparently the Mao government as well. But the Nazis are the easier one to, some people don't get the Mao reference. Joy, joy. Look at his hand. Look at his hand.
Joy, joy.
I mean, it's
joy,
crazy.
Joy, joy.
Let me put on pause. NS Gemeinschaft durch die Freude was a German NSDAP. That's the Nazi Socialist Democrat National Socialist Party. I forget what the DA stands for. Operated leisure organization in Nazi Germany. Joy!
Joy! Joy! Coming in the morning. If we stay together,
it's
joy!
Oh, he's actually throwing his hand up. It straight up looks like a Nazi hand salute. All right, we're not yet done with the intro. No, we're gonna do one more. We're gonna do one more before I break into the sponsor, break into the intro. We are live across all platforms, so I know we're good there. I put out a tweet yesterday. I'll tell you, I love Twitter and I hate Twitter. I hate Twitter for two reasons. It's a freaking black hole, and when you start engaging and then you discover that the people with which you've been engaging are absolute trolls whose sole intent it is to waste your time, waste your energy, and waste your psychological focus, it's very difficult to crawl out of that hole. That's one reason why I hate it. The other reason why I hate it is the written word is always very very easy to misunderstand. Yesterday, I put out a tweet. And I don't like, maybe people want to misunderstand it. Maybe that's the method of distracting people, forcing someone, or nobody's forcing me to do it. And it's my own weakness that I end up doing it, to try to clarify, try to make sure people understand. I put out this tweet yesterday. I'm not freaking deleting anything. People read a freaking tweet. I mean, the whole thing about Twitter, it's short characters to make it easy to make sure you just read the entire tweet. I tweeted out yesterday, I forgot about this tweet. It certainly aged well, May 10, 2023. The original tweet, which now we've seen resurface, which is the only reason I actually remembered that I replied to this tweet at the time. Just to quell it, this is from RFK Jr., just to quell any speculation. Under no circumstances will I join Donald Trump on an electoral ticket. Keywords. We'll get back to that. Our positions on certain fundamental issues, our approaches to governance, and our philosophies of leadership could not be further apart. Now, I have a feeling people read this, and because Twitter is what it is, everyone thinks everyone's out there for a gotcha. I wasn't out for a gotcha on this one. I was actually out for a good for me because I forgot that I tweeted this over a year ago. Viva Fry, at the Viva Fry for people who are listening on podcast. There most certainly are circumstances under which you could/would join Trump on an electoral ticket. And the DNC plays dirty enough to possibly make this tweet the, quote, part one, end quote, in, quote, how it started, end quote, smiley face. Smiley face. So I put that tweet out, and it seems that there's a slew of people. Oh, what did I just do? It seems that there's a slew of people out there who think that I was trying to take a dig at RFK Jr., which I say, okay, fine, you didn't read the full tweet. I was highlighting that even back then, I was saying, RFK Jr., don't get ahead of yourself. Never say never. There are certainly circumstances that would change your perspective. Failed assassination attempt, denying you Secret Service. I didn't use that as an example because I think they might have been denying him Secret Service before that. Screwing him out of the debates, trying to sue him off a ticket. The Democrats doing this. There was another one in there somewhere. Oh, yeah, Kamala Harris stealing the nomination from the Democrat Party, then shutting down the convention, not making it an open convention, and screwing Kennedy in every which way possible. Yeah, never say never, and play dirty enough. You might realize that that tweet might have been too categoric. It's a risk. Like, as a lawyer, you're always clear to leave a little window open. I wouldn't have said under no circumstances. I would say it would take extremely exceptional circumstances in order for me to contemplate being on the ticket with Trump. So A, it wasn't a dig at RFK Jr. B, it wasn't a dig at JD Vance to suggest that RFK should be on the ticket and replace Vance. Anybody suggesting, I mean, this is why I think they're trolls. Any idiot out there who's suggesting seriously that RFK should replace JD Vance on the ticket, you're politely take it with a grain of love. You're an idiot. Like you're either an idiot or you're a Democrat saboteur or you're Anthony Scaramucci. So it was neither a dig at RFK Jr. nor a suggestion that JD Vance should be on the ticket, should be off the ticket and replaced with RFK. Part of the reason RFK made his monumental decision that he did on Friday is because JD Vance is on the ticket. It's because JD Vance is out there for agricultural freedom, for food freedom, for autonomy. It is because of the teamwork between JD Vance and Donald Trump that RFK in part came to his decision. There was another element to that. Not a dig at RFK Jr. Oh yeah, and then he's not on the ticket, Viva. You're wrong. He didn't join. First of all, if you don't understand the reason of my tweet, it was that the Democrats play dirty, and now we have all seen a year of it. It's that they play dirty. He's not on the ticket technically, although by some sort of colloquial understanding of the term on the ticket, if he accepts a position in the administration of Trump, he's not on the electoral ticket, but he's certainly on the ticket in terms of an administration. Bottom line, holy hell, did we witness another. How good was it Friday? I put out the vlog. You've all seen it. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. The analysis breakdown, we're going to talk about it tonight because I'm interested in picking Barnes's big brain over mine. That's the intro. Did you just hear my back crack? Everybody, good evening. Welcome to the show. Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator. My real name is David Freiheit. For anybody out there who thinks they got a gotcha, like, his name's not even Viva Fry. David Freiheit. My last name, speaking of Germany, my last name, Freiheit, literally means verbatim freedom. If you go watch Braveheart, at the end of the movie, Mel Gibson screams, Freiheit! Ich kann take ein Freiheit! No, sorry. They can take, I can't do it anymore. They can take our lives, but they can never take our Freiheit. This is the Sunday night show. It's the best law show on the internet. Hands down. Categorical, not a question of arrogance or pomposity. Barnes has got the biggest brain in the history of legal minds. Everything is on Podbean, Stitch, or whatever. It's on podcast. I put out the audio the next day along with the audio from my daily streams. I go live daily now. I've committed to the schedule. We're 3 weeks into it, and it's working out perfectly. 12:30 every day for between an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the day. 12:30 Eastern. Tomorrow, Austin Peterson is coming on. Thursday, hold on, let me make sure I can make the announcement now. Let me just go to my DMs and make sure that I can. Thursday, Ivan Raiklin is coming on, who's been doing some amazing work on January 6th. And then there'll be stuff in between. I don't know if I'll be on The Unusual Suspects on Wednesday, but that's it. Daily, 12:30. Stay tuned. Next week's going to be a big week. We are live on Rumble. I just got distracted by a comment in the chat. We're live on Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. If you want to support the work that we do, the best place to do it is in vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Hold on, I'm going to give you the link to Locals. Locals link right there. And we end on YouTube and Twitter as well. Or maybe we'll leave it on Twitter. And then we go over to Rumble and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Then we have the after party at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where it's exclusive and we answer every tip of $5 or more. Now, hold on. But before we even get into this, because we also have a beautiful sponsor. And by the way, I watched the entire video. You gotta go watch the entire video. Hold on, let me refresh it. Actually, how far into it are we? Let's see.
Outside your door, but inside your own body.
The
achy joints, digestive issues, weight gain, and fatigue. We're told these are normal signs of aging, but in my experience, it could mean something much worse. I call them the 3 internal enemies.
We're stopping. Oh, hold on 1 second. Hold on.
And they are wrecking the health of millions of Americans right now.
I'm stopping it there, so you go watch it. Chuck Norris is, you know who Chuck Norris is. I mean, if you've been wondering what happened to Chuck Norris, he's still there. He's still out there, and he's still kicking ass. He's in his 80s. He's 84. I think he could also be president. You compare Chuck Norris and Donald Trump to Joe Biden. Just do that. Don't, but do it. It's not because you hit the 80s that you have to end up looking a certain way. Chuck Norris is kicking ass. What's even more shocking, he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by making just one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife started doing it. She's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, and her body looks leaner, and she has more energy all day. Chuck made a special video. It's the one you're watching there. It's in the description. He explains everything. And it's fantastic, and it makes sense. And I ran it by my neuroscientist wife. If anybody doesn't know that my wife is a PhD in neuroscience, make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Viva, or by clicking the link in the description below. It'll change the way you think of your health. Once again, chuckdefense.com/Viva. Click the link in the description. You won't believe how simple it is. Just a reminder: Chuck Norris, the legendary Chuck Norris, is an 84 years old man, and he has more energy than most Americans out there. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch his method by clicking the link in the description in the box below. chuckdefense.com/Viva. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, hold up. All right, Barnes. How goes the battle, sir? How dare you take the left? No, our backdrop and the tie is matching yet again.
Yeah, the camera's working for the first time. I tried a different browser and that worked.
Okay. Oh, I should have said, had you tried unplugging your computer and plugging it back in? I'm joking. Robert, sir, what's the good word? What's the book behind you? Oh, I know what the book behind you is.
Yes, when I was 12 years old, after some months after my father passed away, I had 2 favorite books. One was Donald Trump's Art of the Deal. I still remember quotes from it today about that you should always expect the best, and at the same time plan for the worst. And it was a fascinating mindset trick that I have found useful throughout the rest of my legal, political, and otherwise activities. The other book was the one behind me. It was easy to carry because it was a small little paperback, and it was To Seek a Newer World by Robert Francis Kennedy Sr. And it seemed an apropos book and an apropos story for what took place this past weekend.
Robert, I've asked my wife to bring something in. I might want to go get it just to show everybody in a few seconds. But oh, she's in. Okay, bring them. Okay, Robert. Speaking of investment, speaking of Donald Trump, she says she feels like Vanna White. Check this out. Look, I'm not saying I got 2 pairs of them, but I did. This is an investment, people. This is not. Look at this. I got the shoes. These are the red ones, and I'm never going to wear them. They took a little while to get here, but it doesn't matter because I got them to support. I'm going to put them on the ground here. I got them to support Trump. I got them to make a bloody statement that we're not letting this. This is my way of contributing, and hopefully this will. Everyone. I don't know if there's no more shoes left. I think they all got sold out, and they're going to be worth. It's an investment, people. I'm going to give it to my kids. And then one day they're going to wear them, run in the mud with them, and say, oh my goodness, I kept those for 20 years, and now you destroyed them. Sorry. They're fantastic, by the way. All right, Robert. Well, I know we got to talk about first, but what's on the menu for the evening?
Yeah, so we got a dozen topics and a few bonus topics tonight. First up, what is the legal and policy impact of the Kennedy-Trump alignment announced this past weekend? I'll get into more of the political impact tomorrow on What Are the Odds with Richard Barris at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's People's Pundit Daily. You can find him on YouTube, Rumble, and Locals. But we're going to discuss the law and policy potential impact tonight. That was the top topic over at the poll at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Durov, the man from Telegram who escaped Russia via Qatar, has discovered his great threat was not Russia, but was Europe itself, arrested in Paris, France tonight, just doing a stopover with his airplane. Be careful what airspace you cover and what air you land in. What are some of the legal and the constitutional type objections that might be raised by Durov? Elon Musk going to the Supreme Court over the attempts to suppress, censor, and surveil speech through grand jury subpoenas. Again, this is a case against Jack Smith. Robert Kennedy is authorized to be able to go forward in his lawsuit against the Biden administration for censoring him and children's health defense. The big tech got another setback. This time Amazon on its antitrust violations in the District of Columbia. The Trump sentencing, well, what does that look like a few weeks out? The Trump civil fraud case, more amici joined the appeal of that particular pernicious outcome from Judge Engoron. The Supreme Court and various attorneys general speaking out about illegals voting or registering to vote in the upcoming presidential election. When is a machine gun protected under the Second Amendment? A big federal court ruling this week. The PrEP Act, when does it provide immunity even for contractual breaches or violations of informed consent? A Vermont court had one ruling on it. A federal court is waiting. We're waiting to see what it rules in a similar context. When can states pass provisions like the kind Tim Walz, candidate from Minnesota, did, and then the state of Washington did, currently being litigated by America First Legal before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is to allow children to get gender changes without parental consent, and even allow them to run away from their parents and deny parents access to those children. Diversity, equity, and inclusion in court in multiple contexts against IBM related to a case that I have, and a progressive insurance case where they did selective contracts for Black only need apply. And then we got 3 bonus cases. We've got baby food causing autism. We've got when can you remove a state criminal case to federal court? This is a case that I have before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. And last but not least, Nick Rekieta got some legal news this past week. And unfortunately, LawTube continues to prove in general, not all people here, but most of LawTube, their constitutional illiteracy. I think people who got a law license out of a Cracker Jack box could give better constitutional analysis than some of these people. Or maybe it's just they've decided that grifting to hate on Nick Rekieta makes them more money and gets them more pals. Whatever it may be, the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment analysis that's been done has been pretty poor. And so we'll try to correct at least a little bit of that here tonight. He's already won multiple arguments. People told me there was no constitutional problems, Barnes, with what happened with Rekieta. Then why does Rekieta keep winning in court? That's not supposed to happen, right? Maybe some people jump to some conclusions and are just constitutionally as illiterate as Kamala Harris is economically illiterate.
I'll bring up one. I'm going to bring up one chat right now just because I saw it and I want to address it. Pin here. I take care of kids in a one-parent family, and I don't have any extra money to pay for your paid program. Why don't you have a way to help people like me? I think this is a big failure on your part. 90% of our show is always available to everybody.
I give lots of stuff away for free.
And to say that,
I am mostly sensitive and sympathetic, but to be honest with you, people that whine and think they're entitled to things, I'm not sympathetic to. Because my question to those people is: do you work for anybody? Do you work for free? Do you expect people to have you work for free, whatever work you may provide? If you're not going around doing all of your work for free, don't expect other people to work for free. Well, I'm coming from a working class background. I'm very sensitive and sympathetic to people. We have another discount out right now at vivabarneslaw.locals.com in honor of the Trump-Kennedy Alliance. Another 25% off of 2 months off. So it's basically like $6 a month, for which you get exclusive access to all kinds of, you get hush hushes, you get bourbons with Barnes, you get ask me anythings, you get comment, you get feedback. In fact, if you had been at vivabarneslaw.locals.com over the last 6 months, you would not have been as shocked as the entire Democratic Party by what happened on Friday night between President Donald Trump and Robert Francis Kennedy.
And not to plug sports picks, Robert, but you could have made some money off of it also. Look, I know other than one stupid bet that I made about switching from Walz to Shapiro, I'm still kicking myself. I think the markets have not yet.
Yeah, remember, only in Hollywood do you bet on the Jew.
Well, I convinced myself that Soros wanted him so badly that he was the one to pick, and I swapped my. I'm still kicking myself. Doesn't matter. Also, I'll just
remember Soros was on the other side of the German.
But the pictures of Alex Soros and Josh Shapiro, they make my stomach turn. But then I made the wrong decision. It doesn't matter. I also would just add, 90% of what we offer is for everybody. At
Oh,
some
yeah,
point,
no,
you
it's
also
still
have to
free. Yeah,
no, and you
they
at
still
some
do
point you have to
massive
give.
amounts of free content.
Well,
But
no,
as
but
a
yeah,
whole, I'm not super sensitive or sympathetic to the people who run around demanding other people give them free stuff. That there's a lot of working class people that I know that don't have the economic means, and they don't. But you know what they don't do? They don't go around whining and complaining, demanding to get free stuff. I'm not sympathetic. If you're in an entitlement mindset, you're in the wrong mindset. You're going to limit yourself economically. I'd studied years ago what was the main factor for working class people overachieving the expectations of how they grew up. And the number one factor was they had an inner loci of control. They did not concede to the external forces opposing them that they couldn't achieve. Goes back to Donald Trump's art of the deal. Expect the best. If you expect the best, if you believe you control your fate, you control your future, then you're going to have a lot more impact and be able to achieve things for yourself a lot better than if you go around thinking you can't control anything and you think you're entitled to whatever. For those of us that have been at the front lines of a lot of these issues over the last half decade, what happened on Friday was an extraordinary, unique, incredible achievement. But if we had gone around like a lot of these whiners and losers do, then we would never have achieved it. We'd have said, look at the odds. The odds are completely stacked against us. There's no way we're ever going to get this kind of unity ticket. There's no way we're going to take down one of the most corrupt institutions of influence in the deep state and the administrative state that's been created over the entire and all of human history. But you have to believe. And if you don't believe, you'll never get anything done. The one thing I know for sure is you never got anywhere by quitting. And that includes don't quit on yourself. Don't just sit there and say, oh, look at how bad my life is. Things are, yeah, there's a lot of people in tough positions. Figure out what you can do about it and try to make as much difference as you can and believe that you can. And often you will.
I'm going to save something for after our first discussion because I think it's going to be very apropos. Robert, we're obviously talking about RFK and the announcement he made Friday I started off with the tweet, which at least from the consensus, nobody really misunderstood it or thought I was taking a jab at RFK. They played dirty enough, Robert. The Democrats over a year have played sufficiently dirty that RFK said, I'm not joining the ticket, although I don't know if technically what he did is joining the ticket. He comes out and says, and you'll tell me if I'm correct in my analysis as to why this is even more of a middle finger to the Democrats than simply withdrawing or suspending entirely, comes out and says, look, the Democrat Party today is not, it's the invert opposite of what it used to be when my dad was alive and my uncle was alive. They were the party of anti-big government, anti-big pharma, anti-war, pro-free speech, and now they are literally inverted on themselves, pro-big government, pro-big pharma, pro-censorship, pro-war. They've screwed RFK Jr. at every step of the way, making him spend millions and millions of dollars on defense because they wouldn't give him Secret Service protection, which they apparently stripped from him today. Lawfare, trying to keep him off the ballot in every state. Kamala Harris, he comes out and says, the Democrat Party steals their own nomination, tries to prevent me from being on the ballot, tries to prevent me from being in the debates. This is not the Democrat Party. And I feel that if I stay on the ballot in the swing states, it might actually hurt in that it'll impact the election, but maybe for the Democrats, and they're the enemy. And I've got to, I'm not withdrawing. I'm just suspending in swing states. If you want to vote for me, you can still vote him. You can vote for him in the blue states and on the red states, which basically means anybody who's going to vote for Kennedy in a red state is going to vote for Trump. And anyone who was going to vote for Kennedy in a blue state is going to vote for Kennedy, which means that he could potentially get some electoral college votes in an unlikely event from a blue state, which I think is a bigger FU than if he had just said, I'm suspending everything entirely and coming off all the ballots everywhere. Am I right? And what do you think of this?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was well, I'll do a little bit more of the political backstory with Viva Fry. I'm sorry, with Richard Paris on Monday on What Are the Odds to cover some of those attributes when what the political impact and ramifications will be with Richard Barrett. That too, by the way, completely free show, free episode. But what the impact from a law and policy perspective can't be understated. And this came about because the short version is there's been an effort afoot for a half decade to unite the populist left and the populist right politically. And some of us have been at the front, sort of the front lines of that. I'm probably one of the only people in the country that has been a lawyer in the last 5 years for both Robert Kennedy and Donald Trump on these kind of political matters. And so have been a frontline witness front seat witness to watch this process unfold. And it was supposed to happen in 2017. Trump wanted it to happen in 2017, but the GOP political establishment captured his transition team, Bob Corker and a lot of those types, Chris Christie, the et cetera, and they didn't want to rock the boat. And so his efforts to have a commission then with Robert Kennedy in charge was scuttled. And that kind of disappointed Kennedy's camp as to, okay, is Trump reliable on this? And then came around the pandemic. Trump's first instinct, first impulse was not to lock down, not to go that route. A bunch of people brought pressure on him and rolled him to the point where Fauci got to take over for several months. And Trump and Kennedy was deeply disappointed in that. And it escalated for Kennedy, the consequence of the issues he'd been warning about the capture of our public health administration being imminently dangerous to us on a very big and broader scale than we're recognizing. Sort of big food, big media, big tech, big media conspiring on this sort of Bill Gates dystopian control grid to rid us of our core freedoms. And the response and the reaction to that from various parts of the populist left and the populist right was political freedom, freedom from surveillance, freedom from censorship, freedom from ceaseless wars, medical freedom, the right to bodily autonomy as it related to matters of vaccines or masks or lockdowns, the food freedom, the right to decide to get access to safe food directly from the producer of that food in the case of farmers, and not a corporatized, industrialized, mechanized, monopolized food supply by the Bill Gateses of the world. And then the food freedom, medical freedom, political freedom, and then financial freedom. Freedom from central planners, central banks, from the fiat currencies and into a more sovereign space that cryptos currencies and Bitcoin could allow and afford. And the Trump, his instincts were good on all these issues, but the political establishment that had captured a large part of his administration prohibited and precluded it from coming to fruition. And that put Kennedy in a position where he had to run for office, run for the presidency. He had to do it as a national state. So people were like, well, why not run for governor or something else? Because it's the national government that controls food policy, national government that controls medical policy, the national government that controls crypto and currency policy, national government that controls surveillance and censorship and war-related issues. So that's the level of government that had to be approached. And unless and until he had leverage in the form of millions and millions of voters that he had brought into the process, that he had educated about these risks in the court of public opinion, he had no means or mechanism to break through the establishment wing that was sort of hijacking and kidnapping Trump from his initial instincts to embrace these issues and embrace Robert Kennedy in particular. And he first offered the Democratic Party an opportunity because he's someone who comes from the Democratic Party. His father, part of the party. His uncle, President John Kennedy, part of the party. His other uncle, Ted Kennedy, part of the party. His grandfather, Joe Kennedy, he grew up with, part of the party. When he was young, still tells stories about in his biography, American Values. And what did the Democratic Party do? They blacklisted him from the media. They prohibited debate. And wouldn't allow any debates to occur. And then they rigged the rules so he couldn't meaningfully compete. So he couldn't compete for votes. He couldn't compete for donations. He couldn't compete in the court of public opinion with ideas. So at that point, he left and ran as an independent. And during this whole time period, they deny him security while the threats against his life are increasing. I mean, what Trump and Kennedy have had in common is that it's very clear the Democratic Party wanted both of them killed, wanted both of them dead. That's the only reasonable interpretation of their behavior over the last year. And they almost succeeded with President Trump. And then when he ran as an independent, they did the same thing. Blacked him out from media coverage, blacked him out. The one condition that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had for any debates was that Robert Kennedy could not be included in those debates. And then the third aspect was they waged lawfare against him on completely bogus grounds to exclude him from the ballot, to prohibit ordinary Americans from even having the option of voting for him. So he's having to spend all this money on lawfare, spend all this money for his private, to have meaningful security, given the escalating risk, so that he doesn't have the funds to be able to reach people. to be able to raise more funds so that he can in turn reach more people, so that he can simply campaign, and because he's in court day after day, week after week after week. So he did whatever he could, and he still achieved extraordinary success. I'll talk about on what are the odds, but part of the reason, and thanks to everybody out there who helped with 1776 Law Center, one of the things that the people helped fund was to do a poll by Richard Barris to show people in Trump world that 30% of Americans, about 50 million Americans, were considering voting for Robert Kennedy, seriously considering voting for him for president. Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
If I could stop you there just for 1 second. So the polling, Kennedy had to achieve 5% national polling in order to get some sort of reimbursement on campaign expenses or something like that?
No, down the road, what is you qualify for certain ballot access and you get like $15 million. You get a share of what's publicly available for parties in a presidential election.
All right.
In the next cycle.
Do we know what he was accurately polling at? Because I've heard anything between 5 and 20%.
So, well, his what you could say his floor was around 5%. His ceiling was around 30 to at least 30%. When we polled, we asked people, are you seriously considering voting for these people for president? There were only 3 people who got more than 10%. And that was Robert Kennedy, Donald Trump, and at that time, Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. So 30%. And what we showed, we showed Kennedy had real currency. Kennedy had real leverage. Kennedy had votes, something that Trump, the competitor, instinctively respects and understands. Second, we profiled who those people were. And it wasn't who a lot of people, there were corrupt insiders around Trump telling him that, it's just old hippies. It's these people, and in fact, you should just be critical of him because he's trying to steal MAGA voters and all this other stuff. MAGA voters liked Kennedy, but they weren't voting for Trump. Weren't voting for Kennedy. They were voting for Trump. The voter group, it was working class, homeless, minority, millennials, and Zoomers. And so he was reaching a new group of voters and who were dislodging from the Democratic Party, but distrustful of the Republican Party. So that gave him particularly enhanced capital because these voters are disproportionate in swing states. The third thing that 1776 Law Center poll showed was why these voters were so curious about Kennedy. It was food freedom. It was medical freedom. It was financial freedom. It was political freedom. They don't want endless wars. They don't want a surveillance state that's constantly spying on them. They don't want a censorship environment where they can't share their opinions without being fired or being threatened. They want financial freedom. They want the options of alternatives of Bitcoin and cryptos and those currencies. The people most interested in the alternative currencies are millennials and Zoomers. The people who want food directly from the producer of that food that they consider safe for themselves and their family, disproportionately working class millennials and Zoomers. Now, that's broadly popular across all demographic groups, but it was intensely popular with that voter group. And then medical freedom, people who want drug companies held to the same standards as everyone else if their vaccines cause injury. Why? Because it's the number one group that's been discriminated against related to the COVID vaccine. Number one group that suffered injury, disability related to the COVID vaccine. The number one group that knows someone who has died from the COVID vaccine, and disproportionate, right? It's one thing if an 80-year-old relative dies after the COVID vaccine. It's something else when it's an 18-year-old. And these are who they know, friends and family in their community. 1 in 3 report death or disability to someone very close to them. So this was an issue that people were telling, oh, nobody cares, don't worry, they were just lying to them. And so we used the 1776 Law Center poll that threw people very close to Trump, like family kind of close to Trump, and other Trump close to Trump, including big new donors to Trump, put right in his hands. And he was like, why am I? He backed off of criticizing Kennedy. He was like, why don't I just operate on my original instincts? And then they tried to murder him. And from that moment, you could see the moment he stood up and said, fight, 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 the worm. There's a line in the great movie Wolf where Jack Nicholson comes back. And he used to be a nice, placable, try to work with them, negotiate with them the way Trump kind of did in his first term kind of guy. And he realized he couldn't do that anymore. And his secretary asked him, has the worm turned? And Jack Nicholson says, yeah, the worm's turned and he's carrying an effing Uzi. And in that moment, when you saw Trump stand up and do the fight, 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 the worm had turned and was going to carry an Uzi. And it's not a coincidence. The very next day, he's on the phone with Robert Kennedy. He realized, okay, can't work with him, can't negotiate with him, just got to crush him. It wasn't enough for them to try to bankrupt me. It wasn't enough for them to try to imprison me for life. Now they wanted to murder me. And he's like, that's it. I mean, it's time. It's after that we get J.D. Vance for vice president. It's after that we get, let's talk with Elon Musk and let's put Elon Musk in power to just start chopping away at the administrative state. And it's after that he starts talking with Robert Kennedy saying, let's have a unity ticket. Let's work together on national security. Let's work together on public health. Let's get to the bottom of this and let's take on big pharma, big food, big ag, big tech, all of them. And Kennedy has always remained open-minded throughout this entire process. And he realized, I'm never going to get a chance to go into the court of public opinion because the Democratic Party is bleeding my campaign dry, using every dirty trick in the book. They found partisan, corrupt judges in New York and Pennsylvania. No big shock, it's Pennsylvania now, is it? The reason I got more cases in that state than any other state. To exclude him from the ballot. Pennsylvania just excluded Cornel West from the ballot this past weekend, too. That's how corrupt that state is. It's one cesspool of political corruption. It's the kind of state where judges lock up illegally imprisoned farm workers and are still trying to remove our ability to buy food directly from Amos Miller as we speak. Still pending in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. I'm going to be up there later this week for other Amish farmers they're trying to illegally imprison. That's the nature of the cases. So that's what created the unity opportunity. The corruption of the Democratic National Committee, the corruption of our political establishment, the out of control nature of the deep state convinced both men they should unite the populist left and populist right because it was their only chance, individually or collectively, to take down this corrosive source of corrupting power at the center of the parasitic nature of the political class in Washington, D.C., that is sapping and trying to destroy the productive engine of this country, trying to endanger the security and safety of this country, and is constantly poisoning our own kids, not only culturally and socially, but physically and mentally and psychologically. And that now it's either now or never. And so this unity ticket was something from the populist left and it was right. It was the only way that Trump could be assured of election. It was the only way Kennedy could have a chance to have his agenda put in on issues of public health and national security. And so we'll get to now how this might translate and why it is probably, in my view, Friday was the most positive, promising day for America's political future I have ever seen, period. It is that monumental. It is that consequential. And politically, the earthquake is only beginning to be felt. But policy-wise, we can go in just how impactful and revolutionary this can be.
What do you make? Two questions. One, the first is, just double checked. Apparently, they've pulled RFK Jr.'s Secret Service protection because of his suspended campaign.
Well, of course, Kamala Harris called up right away and said, pull his security. You know that.
Well, then, I answered this. I forget to whom, but I said, look, the threat of assassination of RFK right now is it's academic in the sense that even if they kill him, he's already set in motion what will outlive him in any event, which is the movement being pushed in the direction, on the one hand, of Trump and supporting Trump, and also the agenda being amalgamated into the Trump campaign. So there's no incentive at this point, anyhow. Now that the wheels have been set in motion. The second question was. And I believe I forgot that one. Policy-wise,
yeah. So I mean, the best way the issues that were still lagging within the Trump administration, first term, partially was it delivering on his own intentions and promises, and second, embracing the issues that were the most popular with the populist left, which is reform on issues of surveillance and censorship and speech, but also curtailing the corrupt public health establishment as to big pharma and big food, not just big tech. And that's what he's now fully embraced. What he did was not just unite with Robert Kennedy. He united with Robert Kennedy on these issues. So like the two most likely places for Kennedy, like some people were thinking, well, the Senate can block Kennedy. There's an easy way to appoint Kennedy to positions that don't require the approval of the Senate. And what they believe will happen is that Kennedy will be part of the National Security Council. And so he'll be in a position to advise on issues of national security and war and surveillance and censorship all the way through. Second, Trump will likely create two different commissions. One commission on issues of, and the other thing is, I think he will create the equal to the National Security Council in public health, a National Public Health Council advising the president. Bring all these disparate agencies, the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, bring them all under the same, the Surgeon General, bring them under the same rubric, and let Kennedy coordinate policy and strategy concerning them. And also do a study, use that to actually study what they've been afraid to study for 25 years, which is the impact of food on our bodies, these corporate commercialized chemical-induced food. The impact of and shutting down small farmers and small farms, and the same with medicine. But why do we have a level of drug taking that from prescriptions and pharmaceuticals like nobody in the world? Why are we the last country in the world that allows our 6-year-olds to receive advertising for various risky vaccines? Why does the vaccine schedule 73 plus vaccines now? And as Trump explained, they're giving a little 6-pound baby something they wouldn't put in a 300-pound horse. And so let's do a meaningful inquiry, and then let's have a coordinated strategic response to that, which is going to be, we need food freedom policies and legislation. We need medical freedom policies and legislation. We need to remove we'll be discussing later in the case today about the PrEP Act immunity. That needs to be modified. The childhood immunity needs to be modified. But you first need the independent inquiry and honest science for that to occur. And then the same with the national security apparatus. Also form a commission on that side of the aisle that Kennedy can chair and direct about the greatest crimes the deep state has ever committed as a way to prohibit those crimes from reoccurring in the future. And that is the assassination of his father, the assassination of his uncle, the other assassinations that have occurred, including the attempted assassination on President Trump in July. And Trump has already announced he's going to do exactly that. He's going to do a commission on all 3 assassinations, and he's putting Robert Kennedy Jr. in charge. So there's no better person, better equipped to be in that position. And in that process, start looking at surveillance issues, censorship issues, speech-related issues, and be another advisor to limit the scope and scale of war and our entanglement and intertwinement with NATO and the rest. So it's the coalition that has been needed for quite some time that has come about because these 2 men stuck with it. When people around them were telling them, don't do it, people close to both of them saying, don't do it, they remained open-minded to realize what mattered was put eloquently in Robert Kennedy's words. We have to learn that hating each other has to be less important than loving our children. And that is precisely right. And I think we're on the beginning cusp of the most radical revolutionary change in American politics since 1776 itself.
I want to bring this up because the ideas, Robert, are so damn good that after stealing no tax on tips and pretending it was Kamala's idea, after taking back the flag and pretending Democrats all of a sudden love the flag, Andrew Yang says, winning this election, in my opinion, starts by acknowledging that for many or most American, that's not the right one. Things are not going well. No, hold on. That was just the funny tweet. Andrew Yang says, we need to put together a commission to look into the health of children.
Maybe we now need to inquire into the food freedom or medical freedom. But to all those people out there that helped 1776 Law Center, that poll information was the breaking of the tide that provided the real data, because there isn't honest data. People can continue to support Richard Barris's public polling project at People's Pundit Daily on Locals and elsewhere. Because they're all starting to recognize now this issue deeply resonates with the American people. You have multiple levels of this issue. You have people who deeply care about it because they know someone personal that it's happened to. When you're talking about nearly 1 in 3 Americans know somebody who suffered a disability or death just from the COVID vaccine, That doesn't deal with all the other pharmaceuticals. That doesn't deal with all the other vaccines on the vaccine schedule. That doesn't deal with all the corporate crap in our food. We're going to be talking about a massive class action that's been brought against one of the biggest baby food makers in America. And this baby food maker had toxic metals in their product that appeared to that is part of what the chronic disease epidemic for children. And they're now finally being exposed. And who's the biggest investor? BlackRock. Who's the person putting that together better than anybody? Robert Kennedy. Who is now integral to a Trump future administration on that issue? Robert Kennedy. I mean, that's why this is. Now, there were some people in the conservative world that hear the name Kennedy and they start frothing at the mouth. And I get it. You know, that has an old history and ancestry to it. But when they sat and listened to Kennedy's speech, they with an open mind, they realized why he has the popularity he does. And then you saw even Trump was surprised at the intensity of the reaction to Robert Kennedy being on that same stage with Trump in a Trump audience. As Trump himself said, no other person he's ever introduced in his life has had the reaction that Robert Kennedy did. That's because this was the one issue nagging on Trump, the limitation from why didn't the first term, didn't live up to his own expectations, his own beliefs, his own promises. It's because he dealt with people you can't negotiate with. You just got to crush them because they show no respect, no regard. They don't believe in the democratic process. And that's why you're seeing Tulsi Gabbard on board, Elon Musk on board, Vivek Ramaswamy on board. And there's more coming, more high profile people that are going to surprise people that are coming because people in this side of the movement have woke the everything related to 2020 woke a lot of people up. And it's continuing to wake more people up and more people up and more people up. And you combine Trump and Kennedy in a synergistic effort in a campaign in the White House, you're talking about the kind of most dramatic positive change for ordinary people in at least a couple of centuries.
I'm gonna bring back up the tweet here from Andrew Yang and read it for those who are listening on podcasts. This is Andrew Yang saying now, after the first two theft of ideas in policy, I think Kamala Harris and the Democrats should immediately announce a panel to investigate the spike in chronic diseases and conditions among children these past years and invite different figures to participate. This is a big issue for millions and could easily tip the election. This is coming from the party that literally did not take the call from Kennedy. And Robert, I swear to you, I thought the accounts were parody. Taking Twitter after the announcement saying Kamala Harris didn't return the call. That's how you know she's got good judgment. And I thought they were parody accounts, but they take pride in the fact that they snubbed RFK Jr. And now you got Andrew Yang saying, well, shit, now we see what it's doing and we should do it ourselves. You had the guy calling you to join them and you didn't pick up the call. And I say
I can't because they have become captured themselves. The institutional Democratic Party is the party of the deep state, the party of the administrative state, the party of the bureaucratic state, the party of corporate of the worst aspects of Wall Street. They are the party of big ag. They are the party of big pharma. They are the party of big tech. They are the party of big media. And that's what Robert Kennedy Jr. pointed out at the very, very beginning. They are the party of war. They are the party of censorship. They are the party of this kind of fascistic crony capitalism that has big corporations running our public health policy for their self-aggrandizement and self-enrichment. I mean, big pharma and big food overlap in their financial investments, overlap in who owns them and controls them. You know, you'll find BlackRock overlapping over and over in the national security industry, in the defense war machine, in the big food machine, the big pharma machine. You'll find the same actors, Bill Gates over and over again, George Soros over and over again, BlackRock over and over again. You've got this small class of people that are running the world, and the Democratic Party is their puppet. They can't act independently. They can't question. They can't even allow Robert Kennedy Jr. to be on a debate stage during a primary. That's how captured they are. But if Kennedy had not run for president, there's a whole bunch of people that wouldn't have realized that. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of people on the populist left that were still naive and idealistic. That because Bernie Sanders rolled over like a little puppy, they didn't realize the scale and scope and severity of the corruption of the Democratic Party. That they make Tammany Hall look like a beacon of transparent government, and but they had to experience it, and you see it online with people who are like, before all of this, I would have never considered voting for Trump. Mm-hmm. But after what I've just gone through in the last year as part of this Kennedy campaign, remember over 100,000 people donated millions of hours to get him on the ballot. Millions of people signed his petitions, right? You're talking about people who deeply, deeply care. And then they see not only his superb speech that he gives, but they see the embrace of Trump world of the best of Robert Kennedy in the public health arena. And they're like, wow, we finally have a home. After decades of being silenced and being marginalized, there's somebody serious finally listening to us. And it's not just Donald Trump, it's an entire movement. And that's not a movement they're going to be able to stop or suppress. The waves are coming, and they should be looking for where they can get, where they cannot get extradition. They could be like the Telegram CEO, figure out which countries not to land in. Oh, you're on mute again.
Yeah, I'm still on mute. Before I get too far behind here, Robert, let me see if I can share the screen. Speaking of Telegram, I'm going to read some chats and rumble rants so that I don't fall way too far behind. But there's a big one from an account that I've never seen before. Let me just get a few of these. YouTube is amazing. It is amazing to watch so many learned YouTube ramblers gradually understanding, at least speak out against the hypocrisy and obvious devious agenda to ruin white Christian society. There's one more right here. This guy, right? Beavis Wallace says, howdy from McAllen, Texas. Viva and Barnes, with RFK in the Trump White House, will the Kennedy family see this as a chance to return to American politics? If yes, will they help or interfere with Trump's presidency? I think his family. Let me see this.
Well, I mean, there's only one Kennedy that matters. And it's Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. So John F. Kennedy Jr. might have mattered, but he died some years ago. He was friends, by the way, with Donald Trump. Trump has always personally liked the Kennedy family of the older generation, but everybody but Robert Kennedy Jr. Does anybody even know their name?
No, other than the fact that they tweeted
they're
out.
Useless. They're useless. I mean, there are people who just raise money off the Kennedy name, and they take nasty personal attacks, and that Bobby Kennedy refuses to respond to his credit. By the way, his father, almost everybody was bashing him for running, including people within his own family in 1968. So this is not something that's Robert Kennedy knows that this is the reality, but he cares more about the future of the country and the future of an entire generation of people and our own kids than he does about whether people say nasty things about him, whether his life is threatened, whether whether his family's going to be disinviting him to the next July 4th get together up on the beach, up on the coast. Doesn't matter to him, and the rest of them are useless because we don't even know who they are. So that they're nobodies, to be honest.
I saw a nasty one from I don't know if it was his sister, but very mean, very.
What people don't know is all the other kids were way too young when both John and Robert Kennedy died. Not Robert Kennedy Jr. He was the oldest who had really come of age. He was 8 years old when his uncle, President John Kennedy, was assassinated, and he was 14 when his father was killed. So he experienced, if you study the history of great populists throughout American history in particular, they usually lose a key caregiver young in life, but it usually happens at a time that it is most impacted, and it's usually when they're coming of age. So it's sometime between the 8 and 14, 15 years of old. He lost both his father and his uncle to high-profile public assassinations that, as he himself has said, were done by the CIA. And don't think Trump doesn't fully appreciate this, because it's one of the first things he says. On the Kennedy assassination, we're going to declassify everything, and we're going to have a full investigation as to what happened, and Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. is going to be heading that. So, I mean, the moment they tried to kill him and missed was the moment the game was over for the deep state side of the aisle. And some of their allies inside Trump campaign world didn't realize it, but they do now.
Let me bring this one up because it's a big one over at YouTube, and I'm curious. Now, I don't know. Russian Libertarian says, we are Russian libertarians. 6 years ago, we already defended the work of Telegram in Russia through a big political campaign. Now we are trying to repeat it on a global level to free Durov. Our leader, Mikhail Svetov, would like to contact you to unite against censorship. Is that possible? I've replied, no, I've never heard of the account before.
Happy to.
Yep.
What's ironic is, Putin wasn't really fond of the idea of Telegram being all that independent. And so that's why Durov left. And now it's Russia coming to his defense while Europe tries to put him in prison.
And I'll get to the Rumble rants. There's a ton that are stacking up. Do we go over to Rumble now? Is it?
Yeah, we got Durov, we got Elon Musk, we got Kennedy against Biden. We still in the other side of the aisle legally. We got the Supreme Court, machine gun, Second Amendment, a lot of woke craziness, the Ricada case, the federal removal of state criminal cases, baby food autism. So it's up to you. I mean, we could maybe cover Durov here and then go over,
but
either way.
before we even get into Durov, because I'm going to implement the Rumble Advertiser Center to show everybody, and it's right on point.
Yeah.
No, occasionally it works out. It's beautifully because it is.
Hey,
on
that's
point.
good. Pavlovsky saw the message. I'm glad they arrested. I mean, I'm not glad they arrested the Telegram guy, but I'm glad they I would have told Chris. He didn't ask me. I would have told him, don't be vacationing in Europe right now. If you're in Rumble, I mean, I was joking with the Rumble people, like who had just come back from London. I was like, hey, were you guys back at the debate? It's like, hey, were you guys scared you're going to end up in the dungeon? I was like, hey, you could be like my great granddaddy, the Reverend Robert Barnes, who was one of the 53 people to be tortured and killed in the tower. Because he kept saying the king was a bastard because the king was a bastard. Just literally, legally. That's all. He believed in the Bible, come hell or high water, and he got both, it turned out. But Pavlovsky was vacationing in Europe when this was going down. So now I'll give him credit for this. Wait until you're out of Europe to let people know that you were just in Europe. So that was smart by Pavlovsky. He was like, oh, by the way, I just got the heck out of here. But I mean, they would have arrested him and locked him up if they could.
I might end up claiming asylum in the States, but who the hell knows where it's safe to go anymore? But on the subject of Trump, Robert, because this is the sponsor and it's beautiful. The link is there, by the way, and you can go check this out afterwards, and you should. I have an important message about President Trump for all the parents out there, so please listen. I tweeted out, the propaganda, the campaign between Trump and Kamala is policy versus propaganda, and every now and again, the Kamala campaign has to stop with the propaganda to copy the policy from Donald Trump. President Trump said he wants to take back America and teach our kids to love our country. That's why it's so important that we make sure our kids are learning the truth about the president, not the distorted lies they're hearing in mainstream media. The good news is that Mike Huckabee's team put together the Kids Guide to President Trump, and right now you can get it for free. And that's bold free. With fun illustrations and easy to follow content, this important guide teaches kids all about President Trump's accomplishments during his first term, and it helps kids understand his goals for 2024. Mike Huckabee wants to send you his free guide so you can teach your kids the truth, but please hurry. Supplies are limited. To claim your free kids guide to President Trump right now, go to kidstrumpguide.com, kidstrumpguide.com. And it's amazing the amount of propaganda, anti-Trump, pro-Obama. I saw a book, pro-Obama propaganda. I think it was in DC at the Supreme Court. You realize history is written by the victors, and may Trump be the victor. But in the interim, check out Huckabee's book. The link is going to be there. Scan the QR code and you'll get it. Let's talk about
It's appropriate for children, unlike what a Kamala Harris guidebook would be like.
Oh no, they could. I'm not even going to make the joke because it will be too over the top. So Durov, Robert. I mean, okay. I'm trying to steel man it. Like, we haven't seen the indictment. Maybe they really have a good case on Durov. My point in all of this, Pavel Durov, founder, CEO of Telegram, he started another company, I think it was called DK, and they called it the Russian Facebook, where he was facing pressure from Russia to censor certain accounts that were using it to basically, organize for reasons that pissed off the Putin government. He didn't want to do the censorship. He sold his interest in the company and then left Russia. Only now to have started a new company, Telegram, encrypted messaging. And apparently France decided, I don't know what, I know what they've alleged, but they've arrested Pavel Durov in France. And I don't know that we have any more details than what's being reported in MSM, allegedly for failing to comply with investigations into drug trafficking and cyberbullying on Telegram, the platform. I had a question about this. Oh, no, my underlying point in all of this is the post-truth, information world where the government has so abused of any benefit of the doubt we could have ever given to them after going after Trump, after going after X in Brazil, after going after Rumble in France, where I no longer assume they have good reasons. I assume they have bad reasons, and they better damn well show us the good reasons they have to do this, because it looks like political persecution. What is your take, and what are you thinking about all this?
So from what we can tell, it appears that they had no existing criminal case against him. They got wind at the last minute. He doesn't reside in France. He wasn't coming to visit France. He hadn't gone to clear customs at France. His private plane had simply landed to refuel in France. That's it. They got wind, supposedly. There's probably an inside source connected to him that's ratting him out on a regular basis. This happens all the time. The prince's father, who died with Princess Di, was shocked to discover that the source of the leaking was the security at the Ritz itself, which was owned by the prince's father. Because often the people at these, I tell people, don't go to high-end hotels when you travel. The people there are on the payroll of the intelligence agencies and anyone else who's out against you. Use Airbnb, and preferably use Airbnb of somebody else's account, quite frankly. Because then you're much less trackable, traceable, and reportable. There's a reason why hotels want your passport. They want your passport so they can immediately disclose it to the higher ups. I mean, this is talked about all the way back in the early 1970s in the movies about the famous assassin who was, famous across Europe so much they made multiple movies about him. So, but the way they were tracking him and tracing him was through hotel registries being reported to national authorities. This now can happen much quicker than it used to. Doesn't always happen in places like Hong Kong because China's not on the same page with the United States. And that's why Edward Snowden and Glenn Greenwald could check in under their own name. But other circumstances, not so much. So, but here you have him land. And apparently they just decide, oh, wow, we've got him. Let's just come up with criminal charges and any grounds to go and grab him and arrest him and hold him. Which means they don't have grounds to request his extradition. Because if they did, like, for example, if they had him involved in money laundering for drug transportation, money laundering and drug activities are extraditable offenses almost everywhere in the world. So, and remember, he doesn't live in Russia as a Russian citizen. So it's not like we can't get him in Russia because Russia doesn't extradite its own citizens. Putin is now extending that offer to everybody. It's like, yeah, you don't even need a visa. He goes, they used to tell me all the time that the reason why they couldn't live in Russia and preferred the West is because of how safe it is. And he said, well, how do you folks feel now, given where things are going in the West? Well, I mean, Russia's going to be a better free speech zone than Europe well, it already is. I mean, it's wild. So this means that you can infer by the way in which he was arrested that it is highly likely, we'll discuss this later with the Ricada case, how I was able to successfully infer a bunch of things that have now been proven true. It's because once you look for what is there and what isn't there. So the fact they had to rush and they didn't immediately have an indictment to disclose to the press means that there probably was no indictment going in. The number one. Number two, it also means if the reason why they had to rush to arrest him is that they have something that they don't think is extraditable, even in the Middle East, even in Latin America, even in Africa, where this guy has traveled, or Asia. So what that means, they don't have him on money laundering. They don't have him on drug charges. This is not like the Silk Road case where they accused him, and credit to Trump and Kennedy. Both of them already said they're going to commute his, Kennedy's committed to it as well. But Trump has said he's going to commute his sentence as soon as he gets in. But they don't have the Silk Road roadmap, which would, by the way, a close friend of mine was the person who was his defense lawyer at trial. He provided evidence to me that he was innocent being railroaded.
I just pulled it up as you mentioned it because I didn't even think to have that reflex. UAE does have a bilateral extradition treaty with France, and they've used it for things like drug dealing and money laundering, which is what they are alluding to Pavel as having.
It means they don't have it. What they have is they wanted him to illicitly, we'll discuss this with Elon Musk, a Twitter case before the Supreme Court. They wanted him to use Telegram to allow intelligence agencies a backdoor so they could, in secret, surveil activities. And then they wanted him to censor at their direction and demand. And he refused. He said, there's no way I can do that. That doesn't violate people's core human liberties and human rights. And that has to be the only reason for his arrest because of, or I would say high probability, 85, 90%. Because otherwise they don't arrest him the way they did. They don't arrest him without releasing a pre-existing indictment. And they don't need to arrest him in this manner that raises other conventions and treaties by the way in which they arrested him, we'll get to next, if they had a legitimate case against him that was extraditable under UEA law, UEA treaty. So that gets us to the second thing is this is international space. and it's still a little bit question of vagueness. It came up during Ed Snowden, and a lot of the U.S. scholars were very dismissive. But in fact, Putin in Russia was being more intellectually honest to the dubious nature, the questionable nature, the disputed nature, I should say, of international transit space, because a lot of countries advertise and market this international transit space as not being subject to their jurisdiction and control, and on those grounds allow for certain zones, for example, where you can place your art that isn't subject to domestic taxation, or enforcement of local judicial orders that isn't that you can choose not to execute an Interpol warrant if the person is not yet trying to come into your country. Not only that, you can detain the person without being subject to the limitations of your constitution, which, by the way, they like the other side of this, right? So let's say you don't let somebody in, and you say you're going to have to wait until you can get back to your country or someplace that will take you. Well, technically, that's a detention, and it's a detention without probable cause, unless, of course, that's not your property. You don't control it. You're not the legal sovereign of it, right? So every government in the world pretends, at least, not to be a sovereign of the international transit zone. And that's where he was located. He had not gone through customs. He hadn't even asked to go through customs. These issues also pop up when you're on boats or on planes away from home. And what tends to govern? Treaties and conventions. So now there should be more recognized international legal principles. And in my view, if a government says it's not detention for denying you entrance, but you're required to stay where you're at until somebody comes in and gets you, then by golly, they don't have the power to arrest somebody there either. You don't get to say we're not arresting them for constitutional purposes when we order them to be limited to that space, and then turn around and say, oh, we actually have the power to arrest people because we have legal sovereignty in that space. But putting that aside, the second question becomes all these conventions and treaties that are impacted by this. So there's all these conventions and treaties concerning transit, concerning transportation, concerning international travel, concerning certain core human rights and liberties that might be at issue. So all of that is going to be litigated if they try to keep holding him. And Russia is already raising a huge stink about it because it's a Russian citizen, and using it also to embarrass France.
Well, because I was going to say, it's not like they like him, or I don't know that they like him or even want him.
But made no bones about not liking him, not trusting him. Putin was worried that he was in bed with the West in such a way that he would use his new technology so that it could be a rallying tool to basically stage coups of the Russian government. That's how it translates. But I'm sure, by the way, that they want to remind him that they helped him out in this instance too, because that'll be like that. Putin's smart in how he thinks like Trump in a lot of respects, in terms of how he negotiates and so forth. Like with Joe Biden, he's like, I give you WNBA player, you give me Lord of War. You give me Lord of War,
No,
WNBA player.
The Merchant of Death, I think.
And Joe Biden's like, yeah, okay, thank you. And Kamala Harris doesn't know where Russia is, so it wouldn't matter. But so I think there are major issues with this. The EU conventions at issue, conventions between the different parties and countries that are at issue, this whole politically legally disputed nature of territorial sovereignty that's at issue, where there's contradictory positions taken by every government in the world. Because the reason why Russia came up is last time it came up in a high-profile case was Edward Snowden. Snowden was in the international transit zone in the airport in Moscow. And the U.S. was like, pick him up and send him home. And Russia was like, well, what exactly? He's in the international transit zone space, and he came from China. That has all these other implications. We don't technically consider that our jurisdiction, and that's where amnesty applicants can stay until the amnesty application is processed. So that was the background of it. And all the it doesn't matter. Well, they take an opposite position when they do it right here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's clearly he's being targeted for not censoring speech. Glad Pavlovsky got out of Europe. Don't go to Europe if you're Elon Musk. Don't go to Europe anytime soon. It's clear they are weaponizing their administrative state on the behalf of the American deep state quite frequently. This is not just being done by Europe in isolation. Like you look at Telegram's most effective political advocacy, doesn't even necessarily impact France that much. So this is at the behest of Britain, who's threatening to lock people up for their unpopular speech online, threatening to try to extradite Americans to the UK. And you're seeing this escalation because they're losing control of the narrative. I mean, there's one of the things that Robert Kennedy showed Trump that now Trump is piggybacking on thanks in part to the support of his son, Barron, who's become very good in all this, which is, hey, you can circumvent the institutional media with places like Rumble, with podcasts that are available on places like Rumble, and now X under Elon Musk. And so that's what this is all about, the suppression and censorship of speech and trying to illicitly surveil us constantly and continuously with the end game of censorship and suppression.
Well, actually, quite on point. I'll bring this one up from our locals community. Not to take away from your show, but Trump is on with Sean Ryan for 2 hours, and it's going to be lit. Talking about doing podcasts. Oh, if I could get a Trump or an RFK Jr. or both, it would be amazing.
Well, we may get the latter pretty soon.
Sounds like he asks all the questions we want Trump to answer. Revenge this way cometh. He's still detained now, Pavel, right?
Yeah, as far as we know, yes. And I mean, there's a bunch of conventions. There's the Hague Convention that impacts, access to counsel, what questions they ask him, the manner and method in which he is detained. So you may have extradition treaties that are implicated. You may have other EU conventions that are implicated. You have Geneva conventions that are implicated. So you have a range of implications for France because he's not a French citizen. He wasn't trying entry into France. And quite frankly, it's quite obvious he hasn't committed a real crime, not an extraditable crime, at least.
Oh, some people are out there already spreading the lie that he's, he was facilitating or something, child pornography. They just throw the word out there.
Again, if any of that was true, they don't need this dramatic arrest. They get him extradited
and they would have
extradition.
And they, or at the very least, they publish the indictment. They have it prepared already, and it's not. Don't leave us guessing.
Well, you don't go through all these shenanigans. I mean, somebody got the pilot to land there, right? I mean, this does not happen by we're shot. Like, take the Mexican story, right? El Chapo's kid, supposedly that was the original story. They accidentally landed in the United States with one of the most wanted drug cartel leaders of the last 30 years. And he happens to be on the plane. It's like, And of course, comes out, he was kidnapped. They summarily executed a couple of politicians, asked him to come meet him. They summarily executed everybody. They summarily executed the sheriff. A whole bunch of people. Sounds like a DEA black bag operation. And basically, El Chapo's kid appears to have cut a deal with the U.S. government as part of all this. I'm not going to comment too much further on that because I think that can be ill-advised. Just pointing out DEA's CIA involvement. I won't say I retract all statements. El Chapo's
I have no idea
about this. No idea.
No, and I have no idea what Barnes is talking about right now.
Yeah. You're going to be moving north from Miami pretty soon.
Before we go to Rumble exclusively, let me get as many as I can here, people, because we're a little bit behind on them.
Twin brother Paul. Any statements bad about El Chapo's kid? Twin brother Paul.
And for me, it's Kyle Kemper. It was Kyle, my twin brother Kyle. Hardware 1197 Viva. This needs the light of day. Kamala's prototype version of border crime policy, the murder of the Bologna family in San Francisco in 2008. She owns it. I'm screen grabbing that. I don't know what that is. Karen Todd says, can someone please explain to RFK that the nuclear industry in the USA is fully insured? It took 2 seconds to search on Google to find that out. The French don't drop their waste into the ocean either. Denise and too. Robert, I got some raw milk today, raw milk on Friday, and it's more delicious than I expected it to be. I had the raw goats as a kid, and I loved it, but this is my first experience with natural cow's milk as an adult. Grimphilo says the Arizona speech was perfectly timed to deflate whatever energy the DNC gained, so that mere days after the convention ended, it's completely forgotten. I agree with that. Shofar says the strive and drive for excellence is the currency of success. Thumbs up. My dad, he had his 9th grade education, but was wiser and more intellectually gifted than any elite academic. V6 Neon says, I can't find anything over here. What are the betting odds from across the pool? Change of UK Prime Minister by the end of the year. A flash UK general election by June 25. I guess Polly Martin would have.
Great. I would love to see it because the Labour Party snuck in with 2/3 of the country not wanting them.
Oh, that guy.
The Tories were a disgrace.
Keir Starmer, I see evil in that guy's face, and I don't know him from a hole in the wall, but evil in face and policy.
He sounds like the Daily Stormer. You know what I mean? I mean, his name sounds like that.
No, but you look at him, he looks, I see like blackness in his eyes. It's terrible. Yogalisa says, I'm an independent, voted Trump twice, but I live in a blue state. Trump won't win here. Would it make more sense to vote RFK? Yes, it would.
Sure.
Tell your opinion. Hrud or CH Rudd. I think the last surviving branch after November will be the South Carolina. The demons will eventually pack. Oh, the Supreme Court. They'll pack that though. The Republican tombstone will read. No, it won't. Right. Entry required says RFK oversight CDC FDA with belated acts. Good. Make no mistake, RFK is a partisan Democrat. Read his Wuhan book, Mr. Entry required. I don't think he's a partisan Democrat.
If he was a partisan Democrat, he wouldn't have done what he just did. So all those old narratives about him are DOA. If you're still believing them, you're living in your own little delusional fantasy world because you can't explain. You're in a cognitive dissonance peak. What you just saw. What some of us had been saying now for a year, everybody got to see live. So fully vindicated. And some people that are still in denial world keep pretending, keep living whatever. It's like the people who kept telling me Trump was, an inside plant throughout 2016. I was like, I don't think so. They didn't try to kill him because he's an insider, people.
I didn't realize that I hadn't had this show in the entire time. I'm an idiot. Cindy 1M says, Barnes, since you're in Las Vegas, do you know Jamie Crispin? Big lawyers there. I know him personally. The guy is super neat person. Julie.
Cool. I do not.
They give dogs of all sizes the same dose of Vax 2. Check out Dr. John Robb being arrested in Connecticut and mocked by state government trying to protect the pets. King of the Biltong is in the house. Biltong is one of the most protein-dense foods in the world and full of B12, zinc, iron, creatine. Looking for a healthy snack food alternative? Go to BiltongUSA.com. Viva 10 for 10% off. It's amazing. Like prosciutto, but with beef. Kamala's Willie Horton, the murder of Bologna family in San Francisco. Look it up. I'm going to do this for the second time. Hey, Viva, Merrick Garland just threatened anyone questioning the election. I retweeted it. We'll get there in a second. I'm not allowed to tell you this, but President Trump has shopped on our website and bought a shirt. Fightfor45.com. That is fightfor45.com. Stefanog, $100 says, love the show. I think it's important to acknowledge that BlackRock is only an investment company. You need to look at who the major investors are. For example, the Rothschild family, etc. And then we got Mootsie says, what about RFK also running the commission to uncover the truth about 9/11? Some of those criminals are still alive. All righty. Now what we're going to do, I don't think it gives us the option to stay on Twitter. So we're going to go to Rumble and Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Robert, what are you doing tomorrow? You're live with Barris?
Barris on with People's Pundit Daily. YouTube, Rumble, and Locals on What Are the Odds? Breaking down the political impact of and a little bit of the political backstory for the Trump-Kennedy alignment and breaking down the DNC convention, taking a look at may take a specific look at Nevada, and I'll have updated prediction and projection for the exact amount of votes I think each candidate will get come election day, and an electoral college breakdown. All that will be available at What Are the Odds on People's Pundit Daily tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, I just realized YouTube seems to have implemented something similar to StreamYard, and I can at least access these now. RFK Jr. is still on the ballot in most states. Candidate, Congress and Trump must demand who made the decision to cancel Secret Service protection. What's the justification? He's still a candidate. I agree, but here's the
all they're doing is forcing the two of them to campaign more together. Well, good luck with that idea.
And we got
that just boosts Trump and boosts Kennedy. That's all.
It is. You
can see the natural energy the two of them have.
Absolutely. And I've never felt it's the whitest of white pills. And
it's iconic in an air of iconic. We've had three incredibly iconic photos: Trump's mugshot, Trump's fight after they nearly killed him, and Trump and Kennedy on stage. And that's all credit Trump's stagecraft. Right, they have the lights going on in the background, and the hero song on when he.
Oh yeah, before we even leave this, Robert. So Foo Fighters say that they're going to sue him because he unlawfully used their song. Am I wrong?
Foo Fighters were lying. Foo Fighters tried to. It's a great song, terrible band. So it's a band that tried to suppress people related to vaccines and all that jazz. But Trump had what a lot of these musicians don't understand
that you can license it and just pay a few $1,000 bucks.
License it 1,000 times over. They don't control this. Other licensing organizations control this. But look at that photo. I mean, that's going to be one of the most iconic photos in American history.
It's-
and we've
I-
seen 3 of them in a year.
It's flipping beautiful. I got to find who the photographer is. Let me just see if I can. So I'm not. I think there were a few of them that were like
It won't
that.
be the New York Times guy who magically shows up when anything bad happens.
God Almighty, please protect the. Okay, this is from Trump team. So I don't know who took the photo. It doesn't say in that tweet.
Oh yeah,
okay,
I can't.
It's beautiful,
and you can see the reaction there within Trump's base. MAGA base wanted unity on these issues, on issues of public health and deep state corruption in the administrative state, ending surveillance and censorship and all of it, political freedom, medical freedom, food freedom, financial freedom. These are very popular within Trump's base and Kennedy's base. And so it was a natural alignment. And, credit to the 2 men for helping make it happen, despite people whispering in their ears, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's going to be electric. It's just going to be electric.
Robert, if we're going to end it after this question, and we're going to go over to Rumble and Locals, vote with our eyes, vote with our feet, and support the free speech platform. If you had a guess, the next big names on the left coming in, who would be? I'm thinking Zuckerberg would be the biggest, but I don't think that's possible.
We'll see. The tech space is the most likely space, though. I mean, I think Tulsi Gabbard has said she supports him, but I don't think she's been on stage with him yet. Right. So it'd be people that are popular on the populist left to join him on stage would be the next earliest domino to fall.
Okay.
But there's a range of other dominoes out there that would surprise people, and wait to see to announce it. I mean, I had insight that this might happen for some time, but it wasn't productive. I was a lawyer for both of them. If I say anything, that could be a problem. So it didn't say anything until after it was done.
I'll cross my fingers for Zuckerberg. He seems like the type who wants to be with the cool kids, and the cool kids definitely now are not Kamala
Well, you can
Harris.
start by reinstating CHDs to Facebook and Instagram. Yep. Start there, Zuckerberg.
Well, that'll segue us into the CHD Children's Health Defense. We'll get that on Rumble and Locals. I'm ending on YouTube right now. Everybody, the podcast will be up on Podbean. You can find it. Viva and Barnes Law for the People. It's up there. You'll see it. And what else? The entire stream will be on YouTube on Viva Clips. And I'll see you all live at 12:30 if you're not coming over to Rumble. But come over. Don't be lazy. Come on over. All right, ending now. Boom.